Okay, good afternoon, everybody, once again. Right, so today we've gone to the last two lessons for volume 37. Two very down-to-earth topics about losing weight and about recycling. And these are very relevant to us as lay people, especially. Page 194, 194. How Pasenadi overcame his gluttony. These two chapters are very interesting, very human-centered. It shows the Buddha's teaching is not always about meditation. It's not always about monks and nuns. The Buddha does address issues relevant to lay people as well. Because in many ways, the monastic order is always dependent on the lay community for physical support, if you like, economic support, if you like. But spiritually, the monks and nuns, of course, are independent. So you have this very interesting two aspects of human activity, if you like, the spiritual and the economic, where Buddhist monks and nuns are concerned. They are not economically productive people, and there's nothing wrong with that term. Very often we like to speak of people either they're economically productive or not. But even in saying so, if you look around today, everyone is economically productive. Even the monks and the nuns today, even the forest monks, they are in some ways economically productive. I don't mean that they earn money. What I mean is people are willing to make big contributions to such centers, at least to support these kind of places. So you find there is some kind of economics going on. In fact, one of the things about living in the world is you can't escape economics, so to speak. So the Buddha's teaching and method, in other words, is trying to give an alternative to this so-called economic system that we use to support ourselves. One question we can ask as practicing Buddhists is it possible for us to live without money, for example? Is it possible for us to live without a family, without regular economic security? So what the Buddha is saying, it's possible. And this is a dramatic stand, This alone, I don't think anyone has really made such a big official and ongoing stand. It's a way of life, in fact. Of course, another important thing you must remember is such a system cannot work if there are no lay people around. So there are two aspects, in other words. You can opt out of the worldly system if you want to. There is a choice. Of course, you can opt out permanently and become monks and nuns, or temporarily. Temporarily meaning whenever you meditate. Right? So this is where I often say, you don't have to become a monk or a nun to renounce. Right? To renounce, there are two meanings. One is the cultural or the what is called conventional meaning. You put on the robes and so on, or to even offer marriage to the dead, for example, conventional method. Of course, it's a very good way, it's a direct way of gaining awakening if you take it seriously, this renunciant way of life. On the other hand, both monastic people and people like us, as Buddhists, the thing we must do is, of course, a kind of higher renunciation. That is meditation. Why I say it's a higher renunciation? Because when you meditate, if you notice the process of meditation, it is a kind of nekama, renunciation, right? First thing we learn to renounce is the body. We let go of the senses, we close our eyes, so that we don't have to deal with visual images. Every time we deal with visual images, a lot of thoughts arise. We don't bother about sounds, and all the five senses, we just shut them down temporarily so that we can focus on the mind. So we cultivate second level mental cultivation. Why mental cultivation? Because our problems start there. Our problems arise from the mind. So we go directly to the mind, and this is another very unique quality of Buddhism. In Buddhism, you are taught to go directly to the source of the problem, the mind. So, this is a second level of renunciation. Renunciation of thoughts. Letting go of thoughts. Why do we want to let go of thoughts? Because thoughts are what help us deal with the world. We talk about the world, either within ourselves or with other people. I'm talking to you now, right? And when I'm talking to you, you'll be listening to me, but other thoughts also are coming to you, so you have to deal with so many things. When I talk to you, I also have to deal with a lot of things. As I talk to you, then I say, oh yes, this is something I need to tell you, and so on, So, but we have to let go of thoughts on the second level of meditation, so generally speaking. Why? Because thoughts tend to intervene what we experience. Thoughts tend to take a snap, like a photograph of the reality that is before you, which is useful for a while. But if you want to experience a real thing, you want to see the real thing. You don't want to see pictures of a beautiful country where you've never been there. You want to go there sooner or later. Right? So you have this direct experience, and we call that feeling. You feel whatever arises in your mind, right? And then you feel joy, and when you have joy, your mind becomes more focused, and then you get jhana, and then you learn all this insight, then awakening like that. So meditation is a very important aspect of this training. Of course, when we say meditation, I don't mean just deep jhana meditation. It means simple mindfulness. Be aware of yourself, noticing your thoughts, holding back negative thoughts, holding back negative actions. Those are called precepts. So they're all there. Recently, there's a very interesting discussion about meditation and thinking. Apparently, one local monk observed that some people, especially when they do some kind of meditation, it could be any kind of meditation, I may not name it, they're so deep into this meditation, for some reason, when they come out of the meditation, they lose the power to think. I don't know how that's possible. I think what's meant is that they feel as if they're still in a retreat. So when they're driving the car, suddenly they forgot what to do. The mind seems to either slow down or go black. Okay, in Singapore, we say they go blur, something like that. So, and this, according to this monk, it says that this phenomenon seems to be quite common. It's not just in one place. So he wrote a long article about how to deal with this. The important point is this: meditation does not stop you from thinking. It's different when we say we got to let go of thoughts while we are meditating. At the same time, we also do metta, for example. That is either, if you do metta meditation, of course, you have to deal with thoughts. And when the joy arises, then you let go of the thoughts. In meditation, we do that. In other words, in meditation, you must never forget loving kindness. All right? People tend to slow down their thinking when they force themselves in meditation. And the mind, in a sense, is not more sharp. It's not that they stop thinking. They are not mindful. We can't stop thinking. We're just not mindful, that's all. So that means somewhere the practice is not correct, not balanced. So that's why we need to balance breath, loving kindness, walking meditation, and so on. So there are different methods. In fact, one of the tests of a good meditation, when you come out of it, you feel fresh, your mind is clear, you're more creative. If you're a writer, you've got better ideas to write. If you are a poet, you write better poetry. If you're a cook, you cook nice dishes. You go to some of these nunneries, some of the temples even. They cook very nice vegetarian food, for example. So in other words, meditation helps us to be more creative, and creativity has to do with both thoughts and feeling. So we should not say that meditation stops us from thinking. Not true. When you come out, your thinking becomes even better. And if you're a philosopher, your ideas will become deeper because your mind is very calm and you're able to think better. Now, when we talk about daily life, you see the Buddha also deals with what happens to his followers. One of his very close followers is King Pasenadi. King Pasenadi, from the stories, is the same age as the Buddha. So when the Buddha was 80, he also was 80 years old. And he's a very devout, he's a very devout follower he respects the Buddha very much. And later, you find, I think in the story here, you see how devout he is. Unfortunately, as a king, he really eats a lot. According to the stories, we have a few stories here. The amount of food he eats is a bucket full. Now, if you imagine a normal bucket here we have, that's a lot already. But the impression of this story is that the bucket is the size like a cartwheel.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how big the cartwheel. I assume the cartwheel is not too big, but still big enough. So it's more like a big Indian plate. So he eats a lot. So I suppose if you think of the monkey story and you think of Chupa Chat, I suppose human beings can eat a lot. So let's look at the story. What happens? Page 198. This is from S3.13. Doṇa, pāka, Sutta. Doṇa here means a container. I think locally we will call it a gantang, gantang container. I don't think at this generation ever heard. Have you heard of gantang? Gantang, Malacca, I think Malacca people should have heard gantang. It's a container to measure rice. It's quite big, right? So basically it's like a pail. All right, so bucket full of food by the bucket full. Pāka actually means cooked food. Originating at Savatthi. Now at that time the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala had eaten a bucket full of rice. Of course it means cooked rice. Then Raja Pasenadi of Kosala, having eaten, breathing heavily, approached the Blessed One. Having approached the Blessed One, he saluted the Blessed One and sat down at one side. Then the Blessed One, knowing that the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala was breathing heavily on account of his meal, uttered this verse at that time. When a man is ever mindful, knowing his measure with the meals he takes, his pains become trivial. He ages slowly, guarding his life. Right? So this is a very kind of short reflection, trying to gently hint to the king that he's been overeating. Now, the Buddha can say that because he's very close to the king, so the king would listen to him. Now, at that time, the Brahmin youth, Sudarsana, was standing behind the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala. Now, this is the king's nephew. He's a young, about between 16 to 19 years old. Then the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala addressed the Brahmin youth, Sudarsana. Come now, dear Sudarsana, go before the Blessed One and learn the verse. Recite it to me whenever I'm having a meal. And I will present you with a handful of kashapanas. Kashapanas are coins. Worth of meal daily on a regular basis. Right? So you get extra food. Right? Yes, Your Majesty, the Brahmin youth Sudarsana replied to Raja Pasenadi of Kosala. Then he went before the Blessed One and having learned the verse, spoke it to the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala during his meals. When a man is ever mindful, knowing his measure with the meals he takes, his pains become trivial, he ages slowly, guarding his life. Okay, this verse means what? It means know when to stop when you're eating. And if you are moderate in food, then you'll be healthy, and the aging process also slows down, and otherwise you'll live long. Yeah? So this is not just a special teaching for the king. It is an important training for the monks also. It's called Bojane Matanyuta, moderation in food. And for the monks, they have to practice moderation in food for at least two very important reasons. Number one, they are supported by lay people, so they should not eat too much. It'll be a drain on the lay support. Number two, if you eat too much, especially monks are not so physically active, then it will be harder for them to meditate, for example. However, if you notice monks generally, especially those who take one meal a day, very often they'll take quite a heavy meal, one meal, and because that's to last the whole day. But that one meal, I think is not the same as the 3 or 4 meals we take, which is much more than what they take. All right? So basically, it is to cut down the number of times they eat and the amount also that they eat. Okay? Then the Raja Pasenadi of Kosala gradually reduced the amount of his rice to stop at the mere pine pot at most. So small little amount. Right? Then later on, Raja Pasenadi of Kosala, when he was much slimmer, stroked his limbs with his hands, and at that time uttered this verse of uplift. Right? So it's a very joyful verse. The Blessed One was indeed compassionate to me for my own good, for my benefit here and now, and also for my benefit hereafter. So this is from the Sutta itself. No? So it shows that this is an important teaching. It is a historical event, and it helped the king, and the king is very thankful. A very short sutta here, no? From Samyutta. Now there are other teachings connected with this story. This one story, there are a few records we have of this event, different perspective. This is the most canonical one. Canonical, that means the oldest version, sutta level. And then there are other deeper, older stories, later stories. This is number 2. And notice reference DHA 15.7. DH is Dhammapada, A is Atthakatha. Atthakatha means commentary. These are the Dhammapada stories. Chapter 15, story 7, 15.7. Now, the sutta starts off with a short line from the verse behind the story. Health is the highest gain. The teacher gave this Dhamma teaching while staying in Jetavana in connection with Raja Pasenadi of Kosala. So every Dhammapada story, every Dhammapada verse, there's a story behind it. So this verse is very famous. We'll come back to it at the end of the story. For a time, the Raja would eat boiled rice by the bucketful, right? Similar story, along with portions of sauce and curry. This word curry in India simply means sauce, It's only when we think of curry, we think of the hot, nice smelling curry. Right? This is something more of a local, Southeast Asian. For example, even in India, they don't have the roti prata we eat here. It is something local, something very interesting to note. Right? One day, after he had eaten his breakfast, still heavy with drowsiness from overeating, he went before the teacher, rolled back and forth, looking weary. Slot and topper, Overcome by a desire to sleep, but not able to lie down and stretch himself out, he sat down at one side. Then the teacher said to him, "Did you come, Maharaja, without having rested? Did you have enough rest?" And the king replied, "Yes, Bhante. There is this great difficulty I always have after meal times." Very sleepy from overeating. Then the Buddha said to him, "Maharaja, overeating brings that kind of suffering." Notice here, the sutta only record the pleasant teachings Buddha gave, but this story adds other details that the Buddha said, which are not recorded in the sutta. Having said that, the teacher pronounced this verse. When he is slothful and a glutton, a sleeper who lies rolling about like a great hog fed on grain, again and again the fool goes to a womb. This is Dhammapada 325. Now, this verse is rather strong, don't you think? So, I suppose it's possible for the Buddha to tell this to the king because the king respects Buddha very much. But it's not mentioned in the sutta, if you notice. So it is possible here that what the monks who compiled the suttas did was, they remembered this event, and then they selected certain other related verses and they put it in here. We do not know, but this is just one guess I have. But it's related to the story of Pasenadi. Remember, this story is not about Pasenadi overeating. That may or may not happen. See? It's not important to us. What's important to us is the Buddha is telling us, do not overeat. Be healthy. Practice meditation. That's the important thing to remember. Okay? So keeping that in mind, you can understand why some of the storyteller monks would add details like this. And then the second verse is similar to the Samyutta verse. Okay, next page 200. Having advised him with the verse, he advised him further with this verse. When a man is ever mindful, knowing his measure with the meals he takes, his pains become trivial, he ages slowly, guarding his life. Okay? So next time you notice a monk who is like 70 or 80 years old but still young, you know that he has been keeping his food about rules. Another thing, this forest monk, they walk a lot. They walk for kilometers every morning. So that's why they are healthy and they live in the wonderful nature. But the story doesn't end there. It continues. The Raja was unable to master the verse, so the Buddha instructed his nephew, the Brahmin youth, Sudarsana, son, memorize this stanza. So notice here, there is a variation. In the sutta, it's mentioned that the king asked the nephew to learn from the Buddha, right? But in the commentaries, it is the Buddha who instructed the nephew. But then again, if you think carefully, it's not really a variation. What is missed out is the Buddha Ghosha, the commentator, did not mention that it's the king who asked the nephew to learn from the Buddha. The story only tells you the Buddha taught the nephew, you know what I mean? So it not necessarily be a different account, it's just that the part where the king asked the nephew to listen, to go to the Buddha was not mentioned, that's all. So when we look back like this, we look at the story critically, we can, kind of understand what's missing. After he mastered the verse, he asked the teacher, what shall I do now, Bhante? Now this part is very interesting. This is what we must learn, how to help anyone we know from overeating. Nah? Then the teacher said, when the Raja eats his meal and is about to take the last lump of boiled rice, you must recite this verse. The Raja will understand its purpose and he will at once put it aside. When it is time to boil the rice for the Raja's meal, reduce the measure of uncooked rice by just that much amount that was put aside. Very good, Bhante, he said. And then he did just that. And of course, the king, according to this story, gives his nephew 1,000 pieces of money. Here the number is increased. In the sutta it's 100, here is 1,000. So the king managed to reduce from a big pot to just a small pot. Now notice the instruction here. Before the last mouthful, isn't it? No? Before it's going to finish the last mouthful, last lump, the nephew is supposed to remind him to stop. Now this is familiar, isn't it? Right? Because it is said that the monks, how do they practice moderation in food? They must have this feeling, if I take one more mouthful, I will feel full, so I must stop now. So you don't stop when you feel full, you stop before you feel full. This is rather tricky, and there's a special psychological term, nimitta, is used here. Now you haven't heard the term nimitta, it refers to a meditation sign, you see. But nimitta simply means sign. That means you must eat mindfully, you see. Elsewhere, it is actually mentioned 4 or 5 mouthfuls, not 1, 4 or 5. So I would say 4 or 5 spoonfuls, I feel like, the kind of spoon we use. So I suppose the king would take a big lump like that. So you take 4 or 5 spoonfuls. So you more or less guess, you got to be mindful when you're eating. Okay, if I take 4 or 5 more spoonfuls, I'll be full. That is your sort of nimitta. In other words, you notice a sign in your mind. So I got to stop now. This is a great way of cutting down on eating. So now that he lost a lot of weight, he's very happy. Okay? So this is the ending part. One day the Raja visited the Buddha, or the Blessed One, and having saluted him, said, Bhante, I'm healthy now. Once again, I'm able to chase and catch deer and horses. I can go back to hunting now. That's what kings like to do. Before I used to only battle with my nephew. His nephew is, we do the Ajatasattu. Okay? They kind of quarrel and so they started fighting each other. But now I've given him my daughter Wajira in marriage. This is a real event. So the daughter married the nephew. I've given this village as bath money, dowry. Now that my quarrels with my nephew have ended, I have reason to be happy. So now I'm very happy. Now I've lost weight. I've stopped fighting with my nephew. He's now married to my daughter. And then next, section 11. The other day, we lost a precious stone belonging to our royal family. But it was just now returned to my hand, and for this reason I'm happy too. Wishing for the trust of your disciples, I have made the daughter of one of your relatives as a member of our household. For this reason, I'm happy too. Now, this last one is very interesting. This refers to King Pasenadi's marriage to Vasabhakatiya. He asked for the Sakyas of Kapila Vatthu to give her one of their women so that he can marry, and so he has a connection. And this is very common in ancient kingdoms, connection to marriage, right? So he says he's so happy, everything seems complete now. Then the Buddha replied. The Buddha, in other words, top everything, gives the teaching beyond all this he has said, because all this that the king has said is worldly happiness. Then the Buddha says, health, Maharaja, is said to be the greatest gain. Whoever is contented, it is as if he has received the greatest wealth. Trust is the best of relatives, but there is no happiness that is like nirvana. Having said that, he uttered this verse. Okay, this is a famous Dhammapada verse. Arogya paramalabha santutti paramang dhanang visasa paramanyati nibbana paramang sukhang. Health is the highest gain. Or you can also translate as health is the highest profit. Contentment is the greatest wealth. The trusted is the best relative. Nirvana is the greatest happiness. So in this formula also you see a kind of a gradual scheme of ascending scheme of happiness. Number one, in our daily life, health is the best thing you can get. There's no way of measuring the value of health. Health is wealth, right? Because if you're healthy, you can do a lot of things. So this is where putting our priorities, economic priorities, right. So in this sense, you might say the Buddhist economic idea is that health also part of it. All right? Contentment is the greatest wealth. So this is not a question of meaningless, it's a question of quality. It's a difference between I have and between I am. Okay? I am happy. You cannot say I have happiness. You can say I have happiness, but it's a risky thing to experience. Because whatever you have doesn't really belong to you. The word have suggests that there's something outside of you, and you say, I have this cup, right? I have water, but when I drink the water, I say, I am the water. So I am, that means you equal same thing. I am happy, that means you can't separate happiness from me. No one can take it away. But if I say I'm happy because of money, because of property, then people can take away those things can be lost, and I won't be happy. So contentment here means you are able to experience the benefit of these things right away, and you enjoy it. After you've eaten very good food, or for that matter any kind of food, you have eaten it, you feel full. So there's no difference between eating something really nice or something which is plain. You feel full and you say, oh, that's enough for me, I don't think I can go on anymore. Furthermore, if you eat something that you like very much and you go on eating the same thing, after that you feel the niceness of it also is gone. Okay? So contentment means you enjoy the moment when you're eating. And how do you enjoy the moment when you're eating? Mindfulness of eating. A lot of people, they're not happy eating because they are thinking about something else. So this is where the monks, you notice, when they're eating, if they're really a serious practitioner, they'll tell you, please don't talk to me. They won't talk to anyone while they're eating. There's no such thing as chatting over lunch. All right? They're trying to do that now, but I don't think they should do that. So they'll be eating mindfully and chewing very slow. There was one monk I know, ex-monk, Kantipalo. There's a very interesting story he told once. He was interviewed by this journalist. So the journalist went to see him in the monastery, and it was lunchtime. He's a very strict monk, He looks very skinny, like the Buddha from Afghanistan, very skinny. And so he was eating very slowly, mindfully taking and put the food to his mouth, and then chewing like a cow chewing its cud. So this journalist had never seen anyone eating so slow, and that was amazing to him. He was watching, couldn't believe that this man is eating so slowly and munching away. And then he just couldn't stop himself. He asked at the end of the eating, he says, why are you eating so slowly? Don't you enjoy your food? And then he replied, he says, I'm eating slowly so that I can enjoy my food. So he was kind of mindfully munching. And that's a difference, because if you mindfully chew every morsel, your food gets absorbed more or less 100%, right? And then you won't produce gas, I mean, imagine this monk to be chanting and sitting before the audience, like this monk start, producing gas sounds very embarrassing, So they are very mindful when they eat. So everything is absorbed, and they feel very healthy that way. So this is mindful eating. So once you eat mindfully, this sense of contentment is there. The way the monks eat is almost like a choreographed thing, It's an art of eating. For example, in the case of the Buddha, if he still, the people are putting food into the bowl, so he will just look to the bowl, that means you can still put the food in there. And then once he put his hand over the bowl, that means it's enough. And then once you start eating, the bowl will be quiet. And the other monks will be watching. And this is what we do in the monastery also. We always watch the first monk, So the younger monks are sitting very far in, so they will the one eat slightly faster than the other monks because they need more food. Once the first monk stops, everyone else has to stop. This is decorum. And then once the Buddha washes his hands, that means that's the end of the meal. So these are decorum, if you like. So that way the monks are contented when they eat. So the contentment, how do you get it? By being mindful in your eating. The next line, you see, from personal health, and then you have this kind of emotional contentment, then social contentment. Visasa. Visasa means a kind of a closeness, trust you have with somebody. Trust is the best relative. The trusted is the best relative. Someone you trust is your best relative. Or someone you trust is even better than your relative, if you like. Yesterday we had this class on the psychology of death and living. I was talking about, we were studying the Sutta, this Janusoni, Satta Janusoni Sutta, where the Buddha says that a friend, companion or relative or blood relative should wish or dedicate marriage to the deceased. What's interesting about this line is the word friend is mentioned first. So this is where we don't need to be relatives to dedicate marriage to the deceased. Even friends can do that. Because we all have been related somehow to these many, many rebirths. Okay? Now what's interesting about the dedication of marriage is you need metta. You must have a lot of metta in your mind. It is the metta that's the vehicle of marriage. Otherwise, the evil people can also send marriage. It doesn't work that way, right? You must have metta. It is the metta that spreads, in a sense, shares the marriage with others. The metta is the marriage. So, and the word metta comes from the word mitta. What does mitta mean? Friend. See? So loving kindness is to treat others like a friend. When people get married, they treat each other as friends. So in other words, here the Buddhist idea of friendship is a very close kind of relationship. Metta, loving kindness, treating others as you would treat yourself. So here, to trust others as you would trust yourself also has got a sense of acceptance, metta. So here, of course, if you reverse this saying, if you have relatives and you trust each other, then definitely these are true relatives. So here the Buddha is talking about we are not just, we should not be close to people just because we are born together in the same family. Not just to be born, but we must have the bond, the closeness heart and head, in other words. So this is called visasa, trust. To trust someone is to treat someone as a relative. That's another way of looking at it. And then on the highest level of all happiness, nirvana is the highest. Why is nirvana the highest? Because nirvana does not depend on anything else. A very simple way of understanding nirvana is, for example, when your unhappiness, your anger goes away. We can't say anger has gone anywhere. You can say it's a nirvana. You will not come back. You're very happy, right? Something like that. Nirvana is like a permanent experience of such happiness. So the sutta ends there. Any question on this? It's a very direct, simple sutta. So summarize, summary. How to overcome overeating? You must be mindful and notice just before you feel full, between 1 mouthful to 4 or 5 mouthfuls, just stop. Notice that. Number 2, chew mindfully. Then you really enjoy the food. Eat mindfully. These are the 2 main points.